Amanda, it's so good to have you on the Jewelry Business Academy podcast today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you here today and to be chatting to you and hearing a little bit more about your business and your experience building Northern Tide Studio. And this episode is extra special as you have been a part of the Jewelry Business Academy and community for a couple of months, and I've been working in depth with you. So I know you and your business really, really well. And I know that your story and the lessons that you've learned over the past few months are really going to help a lot of listeners who are maybe in the same place that you were a couple of months ago. So before we dive in, do you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and just share a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, my name is Amanda, and I am the founder, designer of Northern Tide Studios. And I create ocean-inspired jewelry that is made to make people feel closer to the ocean and soothe their souls.
Beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, I started about 2 years ago creating jewelry. I think really started like right after the pandemic, but my business didn't really start to emerge until about a year ago. I was still in the midst of teaching full time. I was a full-time art teacher, and I knew I wanted to make the transition out of teaching to create jewelry full time. And I had a lot of family and friends encouraging me to do that,
Mm.
which helped me eventually leave teaching and do this. And so much has changed since I started.
Mm. Yeah, you've had quite the journey and quite the transition period as well, going from full-time teacher to full-time entrepreneur. And I'd love for you just to share. So, you know, I think if we look back, so you kind of launched it 2 years ago, but it's kind of been 1 year where it really had started feeling like a business. What was that transition like? What was the part where it suddenly felt like this is a business?
Well, I felt like when I started Northern Tide Studios, I was doing a lot of just experimenting with different materials. I knew that I wanted to create ocean themed jewelry, but I didn't know the business aspect.
Mm.
I have an art background. I was a painting and drawing major in college. I taught jewelry classes at a local art museum, and I remember I loved it, but I never was educated with the business aspect. So a lot of it was just, okay, I'm gonna see what other people do. Like how do they do YouTube videos? How do they do Instagram videos? And I feel like I created my business based off of like it almost became more like I was advertising a product
Mm.
and not everything that goes into making it. And a
Mm.
lot of my content on Instagram was very one sided.
Mm.
It was advertising. Okay, this is what I make. Do you like it? Buy it. And I think that people, what I've learned from the Jewelry Academy is people want to know you. And it's not just about the product that you're selling, the jewelry that you're creating, but how do you put your heart and soul into it? What inspires you? People
Mm.
like that journey and that story. And since I joined the Jewelry Academy, you've really taught me to more become a person in my brand.
Mm.
And I think
Embracing being that face of your brand.
yeah, and I wasn't. And also just the education of how to run a business. I think a lot of people go into it starting off as a hobby with almost like that business mindset, like, okay, I want to make this into a business, but I just like doing it. I just like making jewelry. And then they start out
Mm.
at markets, but they don't know how to run it behind the scenes.
Yeah, the business structure behind the scenes is for some people it's just like when they're not too sure what that actually looks like. And I am glad that you shared your story and your experience of this because I also find that some people feel a lot of shame behind not understanding the business side of of their business. And, you know, it's totally normal. There's so many roles in a jewelry business. You cannot be expected to just know how to do them all. It's just not possible, especially when that's not your background. So, you know, what I've always seen with myself is when I hire coaches, I find that they always sort of collapse time and help me take shortcuts and avoid all the mistakes they've made in the past, and also just like get me on the right path, get me on the right track. And I'd love to know, what was your aha moment that made you decide to hire me as a coach and get support in your business?
I think it was the point in my journey that I was like, I'm not doing something right. My
Mm,
pieces were selling well at markets, and people really like to see who's behind the making of it. But I felt like there in October, I was kind of in that transition of leaving my job. And I said to my husband, I said, either I'm going to do this right and get some help, or I'm just not good at lead teaching. And I was listening to your podcast for probably like a couple of months. And
mm,
I found that your particular podcast really had a warm feeling to it. It was warm, it was genuine, and it was exactly the type of person that I wanted to work with. There's a lot of, podcasts, people out there trying to sell almost like they're coaching as a product.
mm,
And I really wanted someone to personally one-on-one sit down with me and be like, okay, Amanda, this is how we do it.
mm,
And I was so frustrated because you can do as much research on brands and marketing and business, but that's going to take you a really long time. And I think my aha moment was in October, where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I want to work with Robin. I want someone to be like, no, this is not how you do it. You need to restructure this way. You're burning out. You need to slow down. And so I'm just so grateful that in October I signed on, because I think out of everything that I've done in the past, this has been the most beneficial for my business.
amazing. And I'm glad that you shared that, because the reality is there is an abundance of information on Google for free. On podcasts, there's just an abundance of information and knowledge and resources out there for business owners. And, you know, you can feel like, okay, well, I'm just going to find all this information and go and take it and test it out. And you can totally do that. But, you know, I've tried that before as well in the past, and it can really lead to burnout. And that's why what we really focus on in the Jewelry Business Academy, as you know, is implementation, because it's all very well being like handed information and be like, here's all the strategies, here's all the information you need. But most people, when they're handed that information, do not know what to do with it, which is why we break it down into these 1 to 2 minute tasks. That's why we make it, you kind of take you on a journey, which we customize for each client in terms of like where we're starting and what we're focusing on, and take you on that step-by-step journey so you can actually implement what you're learning. Because ultimately implementation is key. Like if you have that information and you're not implementing it, there's no point to it at all. So I'm glad that you shared that. And, you know, I'd love for you to share what one of the biggest lessons that you've learned since joining the academy is.
Take it step by step and don't rush things to the point where you become burnt out. I dove into the business academy rushing myself through it.
Mm,
And I said, okay, here are the modules. This is what I need to do. You're going to do it, and you're going to do it in like an hour. And I was like, no way. And we've had many conversations where you told me you need to slow down. You need to um, work everything out in a reasonable schedule. And I think my biggest lesson finally really sunk in a couple of weeks ago, where I finally feel like I don't have to get all this done in one day to build my brand.
mm,
It's not a race, it's a marathon. And that's
mm,
something that has really always stuck with me, because I felt like when I left teaching, it was a race for me to grow my brand so big that I'm going to replace that income. But That's not the way to do it. And I think that, with all of us in the Jewelry Business Academy, you've created a content for us to follow where it almost forces us to slow down and take it step by step. Otherwise, you are going to burn out. And
Mm.
I was there. I was burnt out, and oh my goodness, does that just take a toll in it? And I agree with you. It takes a long time for you to get out of that burnout feeling, and I it did take me months.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you've actually shared that because, well, there's a couple of things that you talked about that I want to touch on, but burnout is such a big thing in the industry. And I know before we started recording, you were actually just talking about, how boundaries have started really helping you. And it suddenly has clicked. And I know that this is something we have worked on since day one of you joining the academy, because when you joined, if I recall correctly, you were working till 1 a.m. At night. You're working every single day, like so many hours. And I actually have like set new work schedules for you, like customized. And I think we're at like, how many hours a day have we broken it down from?
I was working about 12 hours a day and splitting it up because I'm a mom, so I had to split up my morning, and then after my kids went to sleep, that's when I would work till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was about 12-hour days.
Mm.
Now I'm working about 4 hours a day.
Mm.
Big
And
difference.
that was a massive shift. And I know that was a real struggle for you to actually make that shift. And I'd love to know, like, what's your experience been since making that shift? Like, has your productivity gone up? Like, are you seeing the positive impact of that? Did you have anxiety around cutting down hours, thinking that's not going to get you the results? Like, can you walk us through that?
Well, when it came to the work time, I wasn't so much focusing on putting myself out there on social media. It was more like I need to produce a lot of jewelry, and this is the time that I have to work.
Mm.
And since finally got comfortable showing my face on Instagram, and that's always such a huge struggle for everybody,
Mm.
I feel like I'm taking people on a journey. This is what it's like behind the scenes, and setting those boundaries. Okay, this is how much you're going to film for Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
This is how much time you're going to put into producing your jewelry, and the boundaries had to be set. I had
Mm.
to set those boundaries because a couple of months ago, I think it was probably around Christmas time, I was in the middle. I was doing the Jewelry Academy, and it was Christmas, and I still was just not stopping myself. I was working, working, working. And I think a couple of weeks ago, I started to see a big increase on my Instagram. People were going to my website,
Mm.
people were interacting. And I
Mm.
started to feel like I wasn't alone.
Mm.
And I felt just more relaxed that I put myself in the mindset, okay, these are the hours that I'm working, and also letting go. It was so important for me just to let go of the anxiety
Mm.
and just feel like myself again, and have fun with it.
Mm.
And I think since I've done that, it is really, I'm smiling right now because it just feels so good to let all of that workaholic feeling just go and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm just gonna go with it. I'm just gonna start
Mm.
filming on stories. It might, I mean, it could be me rambling on, but people like to see you as a human being. And I felt like when I was doing my Instagram reels months ago, I still felt like I was so anxious and tight all the time.
Mm.
And since creating that set schedule, which you and I have gone over so many times, I feel more free. I feel like
Mm.
I'm able to now create the brand that everybody's going to love.
Mm. I really love that. And I love that you've shared that because, sometimes people feel like structure is going to inhibit them, but that structure allows you to relax into your business. It allows you to feel free. It allows you to be creative. It clears up your headspace. It clears up your energy. And so I'm so glad to hear that, Amanda. And I've also seen like the transition on your Instagram, just the way you're showing up. It's so much more alive, so much more feeling. There's so much more of you showing up authentically. And, you have such a beautiful message behind your brand, and it's actually really coming through now. And I know you've shared some wins with me, and I don't know if you want to share them on here, when you had the woman in the coffee shop recognizing you, and you've had like a lot of really incredible moments. But do you want to share a couple of wins, big or small, that you've celebrated since joining the Academy?
Absolutely. Yeah, I walked into my local coffee shop a couple of months ago with my daughter, and the owner, she's been following me on Instagram for a while, and she's like, "You're Northern Tides. You're Northern Tides Studio." I'm like, "Yeah." Yeah, I'm like, "Oh wow, that's so nice." And I could be out, and especially if I'm wearing a specific piece of jewelry, like my Salos of the Sea necklace, people recognize that. So the compliments that I'm getting just on the jewelry, people asking for my card, and the biggest win is I now have stores that are reaching out to me that
Mm.
I haven't even reached out to them, because as an entrepreneur, as a jewelry business owner, I am trying to get my product, my jewelry, into stores. But in the last 24 hours, 3 stores have reached out to me and placed orders.
Incredible. Incredible. I know you just shared that with me as well before we started recording. And you have stores across the US now. Do you know how many stores you have?
I've lost count. I
You've
have
lost count. It's a good problem.
it's probably close to like 75.
75 stores across the US.
Yeah, I've all
Incredible.
from Oregon to Florida, New England, and because I'm from New Jersey, I have quite most of my stores are from New Jersey, but my new ones are actually up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and another one in Florida and Connecticut.
Amazing. I love that. We'll link it. We'll link your website in the show notes so people can check out your pieces and find the stores in case they can go shopping in person. That would be amazing. But I love that, the fact that you're starting to show up authentically on your page. You have that story. We got really clear on your brand story and what feels authentic to you. And so now it feels effortless. And I can tell it's effortless. And I can tell it's something you're naturally passionate about, because even if it wasn't a business, I just know that's what you'd be talking about: the ocean, the water, the effect of that. There's a lot more to your brand than just the jewelry, and you're already sharing that so effortlessly now. And you may not recognize this, but you're doing really strong attraction marketing, which is why these stores are finding you and reaching out now, because your brand is getting stronger and stronger. So I really love hearing that. And I'd love to hear like what your experience has been of being in the Jewelry Business Academy, and like what you're enjoying the most from being in the program.
I love the group calls, because as an entrepreneur, somebody that, I'm working in my home studio, I don't get to connect with other people sharing the same struggles, perhaps having the same questions, and just being in it together. And I feel like the group of people we have at the Jewelry Business Academy have been such a wonderful asset. Um, and the education that I've gotten from the course itself is just so put together nicely. And I think the best thing about this is the community that you've built, and how you still have people that are no longer in the business academy that will hop back on, and we'll see some old faces, and it's just so nice to catch up and give each other advice,
Mm,
and be a crutch for when we have some struggles.
mm.
So it is just, it's great.
I love hearing that, because, that's what it's there for. It's there to go through the lows with you, give you that support when you're having challenging moments, which is inevitable in business. It's inevitable as human beings to have days where we just struggle to show up. And then they're there to as well celebrate your wins. And I totally agree with you. We actually have a really special community. Like, I always knew I wanted to build this community. I knew I wanted it to be a special community, but I had no idea how incredible all the women and men joining the program and joining the community would be, and how tight-knit the community would be as well. So I really, really love that. And I'd love to know your advice to somebody who's listening to this and knows that they need more clarity and focus and structure and accountability in moving their business forward, but they feel really anxious about making the investment in themselves and their business. What would your advice be to them?
My advice, and I've thought about this before, don't give up. If you're at the point where you're in your business and maybe you've just started your jewelry business and you're second guessing yourself and you're like, this is too much work. I don't know what I'm doing. I think the biggest reward is getting support. Because I was there. I was either at that point where I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this anymore. Or I'm going to find somebody that is going to be able to get me through it. And I think there are many people that are starting their jewelry business and are questioning whether or not they want to continue, but investing in the Jewelry Business Academy has been a complete lifesaver and such a wonderful change for me. And I feel like it was such a right thing for me to do. So anybody who is just starting out, if you are feeling that struggle, um, get the support that you need. It really makes all the difference. And I can honestly say I was burnt out and I really needed somebody to really walk me through it. And there's not a lot of coaches out there that specifically work with jewelry designers.
Mm.
And this is exactly what I was looking for. So
Mm.
invest in it. It is so worth it. I can't tell you. I'm just so incredibly blessed that I'm where I am now. And I feel like if I wasn't in the Jewelry Business Academy and I was still doing this on my own, I would probably be teaching instead of doing this.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, Amanda. And yeah, I'm so glad to have you in the academy, and I'm so proud of all the work that you're doing, because ultimately, like, I'm there to give you the strategies and help walk you through it, but you're the one actually taking action and actually going and implementing it and putting yourself out there. So I really love that you shared that. Thank you. And I'd love for you to share some of the other lessons that you learned from our coaching together that you think would maybe be helpful to someone listening to this. Maybe, around the collection, because I know we did a lot of work around developing your core collection, or whatever you think would be a lesson that somebody listening would really find very helpful.
Don't put so much emphasis on your branding right away. Don't put so much emphasis on the stock. That was a big thing for me, is having so much in stock. And as for the core collection, I'm still working through that as well. I think the core collection is something that evolves over time. And I think that you need to take it step by step. The biggest challenge for me was social media. And I think a lot of and just meeting other people from the Jewelry Business Academy, they're all so afraid to go on Instagram.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, yeah, it feels so awkward. You're like, okay, what do I say? What do I do? I'm gonna refilm over and over and over again, and it could take hours. And I think someone that is going to be coming into the Jewelry Academy, it's okay if you're not comfortable right away. It's okay if you want to take baby steps. And it's okay if you just want to, go onto Instagram and say hello. You just want to step out of that, because if people are coming into the Jewelry Business Academy, they're coming into it for a reason. So they're almost coming into it apprehensive, scared. Oh, what is she going to make me do? how uncomfortable am I going to be showing up
Yeah.
on stories? Um, and Instagram, social media, TikTok, it's that is also a marathon.
Yeah.
It's not a race to the top. And don't get
Um,
discouraged if you don't see the results right away, because it does take time and people want to know you as an artist, as someone who's going to create those one of a kind pieces. And that's something that I really strongly emphasize in my brand, is that you are getting me. You're getting, when I
mm,
create my pieces, you are getting those one of a kind pieces created by an artist, influenced by not just jewelry, but what the feeling behind it brings. And
mm.
it's funny because I actually had one of the books that I'm reading, Blue Mind, I had the author start to like and follow my posts.
Oh, incredible.
There's so much meaning behind it, and I think that when women invest into a piece of jewelry, they are investing that feeling.
A
So
hundred percent.
so for me, it's like, well, it's not just a pretty piece that you're going to be wearing. You are going to have a sentimental value.
Mm. Yeah, and I really love that because people sometimes forget that people are buying your jewelry because of the sentimental value and the feeling behind it. So it's not just the product details. The product details are secondary to the feeling. And I think I really love that you shared, that in the Jewelry Business Academy, we have a saying that I say pretty much every day to somebody. We're going to feel the fear, acknowledge like, oh, this is scary, this is uncomfortable, but we're going to take action anyway. We'll feel the fear and do it anyway. The pace at which you do it is going to be different for everyone. I have people who like, oh, I'm really scared of going on Instagram, but okay, I'll jump in, and they just start posting videos. I have others like somebody this week who's like, okay, I'll do a 10-second video and I'll just say hello. And I'm like, that's great. That's a start. And we just start with whatever baby steps feel comfortable, and everyone can go at their own pace. And that's the thing about business. We're all in it. So we have that control over how we do build our business, and you can build it in a way that feels comfortable and supportive to you. So if you want to take baby steps, take those baby steps until you're ready to take bigger leaps and bounds in your business. But Amanda, this has been so much fun chatting to you, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you back on in a couple of months to hear all about the growth, all the updates that you have to share, all the lessons learned as you're scaling your business. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us before we go?
Um, just that, that fear about joining the business academy, the fear about going on Instagram. To be honest, you'll get over it. You'll get
Mm,
over it. The more that you put into the Jewelry Academy, the more you're going to get out of it. So if you're serious about creating your business, then you need to be serious about following the steps to get you there. And that's what I just love about your program. And I love that I feel like there's no pressure.
mm.
And that's important to somebody who's diving into something that they've never done before, which is the business side of running a jewelry business.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. And thank you for sharing the lessons that you've learned over the past few months as well with all our listeners. And I know a lot of listeners are going to be feeling really inspired, and they'd love to follow along on your journey and see your jewelry. And so, where can our listeners find you? How can they connect with you, and how can they support you?
You can find me on Instagram at Northern Tide Studios, and my website, which is northerntidestudios.com. And I'm on Facebook at Northern Tide Studios. So
Amazing. So we'll link all of those in the show notes. For anyone listening, you can go ahead and follow Amanda. But thank you again so much for being here, Amanda.
thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.